A lack of oxygen to the body's vital organs, known as hypoxia, is the major cause of death in intensive care. Research into critically ill patients is fraught with problems, but a team of medics has struck upon a novel idea: test healthy volunteers at high altitudes, where the low levels of oxygen will simulate the conditions of critically ill patients. I'm Dr Joff Lacey, and in this special episode of The Cure, I'm here in Nepal, where an extraordinary experiment on Mount Everest could have enormous impacts on the survival rates of intensive care patients. Despite intensive care being one of the most sophisticated areas of medical science, there's still a very limited understanding of why up to 25% of patients die and others survive. So I'm here at the bedside of Margaret Rutherford, who's a patient on intensive care, and with her daughter Jackie. So Jackie, how long has your mum been on intensive care?
Nearly a month.
Nearly a month. Mm-hmm. And what was it that brought her into the unit originally?
She had a bowel operation,
right.
So she came onto the unit and the operation went fine. But then she had something happened and her throat closed, and she had an emergency tracheotomy, and she's been in since.
So she couldn't breathe?
No, still quite poorly.
Like many patients in intensive care, Margaret is being treated for hypoxia, a condition that means her vital organs aren't getting enough oxygen. Professor Monty Mythen is a world-renowned specialist in intensive care.
All diseases in their most severe forms, the patients can end up in intensive care. But the unifying feature is they have problems with either getting oxygen into their body or using that oxygen. We refer to that as hypoxia. Even if we can get the levels up in the blood, it's the cells won't use the oxygen. So the cells themselves, for some reasons, the little furnaces within them that make the energy, the mitochondria, are broken in some way. So that's the thing that we battle with every day. What we do at the moment is, if we see low levels of oxygen, we give everyone extra oxygen. But we don't actually know if all those patients need that. Some of them may be coping, they may be adapting in some way that means we could leave it for a bit longer.
Why do we not know yet?
Well, it's very, very difficult to study within this environment. The range of diseases that people have is enormous. So if we're trying to study the pure signal of hypoxia, it's nigh on impossible in this environment. So we have to look elsewhere.
The effects of hypoxia can be recreated in decompression chambers, but this is not feasible for large-scale research. So the scientists of Extreme Everest plan to take over 200 healthy volunteers for 3 weeks at a time to an environment where the low levels of oxygen will simulate the hypoxia suffered in intensive care, the Himalayas. I'm here for 6 weeks as part of the research team. Extreme Everest is a research expedition doing research into intensive care, and we're in the foothills of Everest. How are those two environments connected?
Because we're over a third of the way up to Mount Everest, the air is very thin here.
Yeah.
So we are already suffering oxygen deprivation. So in intensive care, me and you would have been put onto oxygen, we would have been thrust onto a ventilator, and we don't know that's the right thing. You know, we're coping fine at the moment. And increasingly there's evidence it's the wrong thing.
Several hundred people have already been tested as part of the research, but this particular trip is unique.
Well, we're about 10 years into this now.
Right.
And on this specific expedition, we're going to look very, very closely at a large group of Sherpas for the first time. You can see that they're extremely well adapted to this environment. But when we measure them using our classical understanding of physiology, we look at their hearts and their lungs, they're no different. But we now have questions that we're going to ask at a cellular level, at a mitochondrial level. There's something about the way they're wired that allows them to get the most out of the little amount of oxygen that's here.
The key to the Sherpa physiology may be efficiency.
Absolutely. Just coming around the corner now is our second Sherpa team.
These guys are part of
These are guys. Namaste. Enjoy Everest Base Camp.
Great stuff.
Good to see you. Take care. We'll see you on the way back down. Enjoy the muscle biopsy. Yeah? We think we're right on the edge of a major breakthrough. If this pans out, it's going to change the way we treat intensive care patients forever. We're writing history here. This is the biggest group that's ever been studied in this detail, and we hope that what they have to give to us is a gift that will change our world forever.
A tea house in Namche Bazaar at 3,500 meters is the location for one of the laboratories. The team have agreed to perform one of the many tests that they're doing here at the Namche laboratory on myself, and will then compare the results with the Sherpa here. And this comparison on a larger scale is key to what the Extreme Everest team are doing here. Hi Tom.
Hi Joff.
Good to see you.
And you?
So what have we got here?
Well, this is our anox machine, which measures the amount of nitric oxide in your breath.
Nitric oxide is an important biological regulator, which has wide-ranging effects on a number of physiological mechanisms, including dilation of blood vessels, the flow of oxygenated blood, and blood pressure.
Now, deep breath in through the mouthpiece. When you're ready, start breathing out, and you need to keep this target here green. And a short breath in. Good. And the level of nitric oxide from your nose is 16.7. So, a fairly average result, but we'll get Wang Chu in and see what his is to compare.
Hello. Hello, Wang Chu. I'm Dr Joff Lacey. I'll be part of the team who are doing the exercise testing on you this afternoon.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea why the Sherpa people are so good at altitude?
अब किनकि यही ठाउँमा त जन्मेर यताउता यसो चिसो हावामा यताको एकदम हावापानी राम्रो भएर त्यही भएर कुनै पनि प्रब्लम नहुने हिसाबले.
Wang Chu takes the same test, and I'm interested to see if there are any obvious differences in our results.
Good. And the result of nitric oxide is here is the 77.8. And you see, if you remember, yours was 16.4.
Yeah.
Whereas his is up at 77.8, so you can see the
Oh
difference.
my. The difference between the results of Sherpas such as Wang Chu and lowlanders such as myself provides strong supporting evidence that nitric oxide may play a vital role in the body's adaptation to hypoxia. But this is just one of over 60 different tests being conducted by the scientists. So I'm here in the cardiopulmonary exercise testing, or CPET lab, here at Namche laboratory. What it involves is someone exercising on a bike connected to various monitoring equipment, and it provides us with a lot of objective physiological data about their exercise performance.
Wang Chu, you ready for this, honey bun?
If you have a seat on the bike, the aim of the test is to keep going for as long as he possibly can, okay, to give his all. Happy?
Yeah.
So Wang Chu just started the 3 minutes of unloaded cycling, so it'd be very easy. He kind of gets into a nice steady state, and that ramp will just keep going up, and he'll get harder and harder until he can give no more. Ramro, Wang Chu.
Drive those legs.
Ramro, Ramro.
Keep going, Wang Chu.
Come on.
Keep going.
Good
Drive
man.
those legs round.
Good man. Pistari, Pistari. Ramro, Ramro. Okay, okay. So we've got really good results there.
Well done, Wang Chu. It's a great test.
It was a really good test.
I need to get a gear.
Bumsel. Bumsel. Wang Chu's efforts will provide yet more data for the Extreme Everest team. The host of the laboratory in Namche is Lakpa Sonam, a Sherpa who lost his hearing having contracted meningitis as a child. It's beautiful.
This house is a typical Sherpa living house. I like to live during the summer, myself here practicing traditional Sherpa life.
Do the Sherpa people have an understanding or a belief as to why you're so good at altitude?
And since our migration, our ancient live in this high mountain, we go holding high of 5,500 meters without any problem. In 1953, when Sir Mount Hillary climbed Mount Everest, that time Tenzing was also called that he had a third lung because of he walked so well high up on South Pole, etc. This is what I did in the book.
As someone who experienced intensive care, what does it mean to help the Extreme Everest team?
After my deafness, my long involvement with the doctors, I know how important this job is. My contribution may be very little, but if we could find something, it will help the whole world. And that is why I'm very happy to be this.
So the Sherpa testing in Namche is now complete. Research on this scale into the amazing physiology of the Sherpa people has never been done before. and there's real excitement about what knowledge we'll gain from this. I'm now joining the first group of adult lowlanders as they move on up the mountain towards Everest Base Camp for further scientific testing. And this is where the trek really starts getting tough. The air's getting thinner, the walking is getting more challenging, and everyone has to work that much harder. So Jen and Jan are identical twins, and they're part of one of many groups of volunteers that are taking part in this expedition. So what I want to ask is, what do your friends and family think of you coming on this expedition?
They are really amazed. I think we're totally mad but brave. But a friend of Jan's came up with a motto for our trip, which is adventure before dementia, which we like.
Were your respective partners not interested in doing this trip?
No, and my partner had a major operation about 18 months ago, and
Oh, really?
it was his first time in hospital, and you know, he didn't cope well.
That probably makes the part you're playing in this expedition even more pertinent.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah. As identical twins, we're such an important genetic resource, so it's spurring us on to do it.
Charlie, you've given up 3 weeks to be submitted to a variety of medical tests and endure the hardship of high-altitude walking. Why?
Because it's fun.
There's got to be more to it than that.
It's a great opportunity to do an amazing adventure, and maybe medical science will take some strides forward.
As we continue to climb the mountain, altitude sickness becomes a real danger. Everybody is aware of the symptoms to look out for and the fact that it can mean the end of the trek for them. So we're now at Ferrochet, which is at 4,200 meters of altitude. And in terms of altitude sickness, have you had any problems so far?
Yeah, we had one girl early on. She started getting headaches and vomiting, which isn't unusual. And we had one of the guys yesterday who was feeling quite weak, and that's one of the classic signs is excessive fatigue on limited exertion.
The real problem is the unpredictability. It's
Yes.
notoriously unpredictable.
Absolutely.
You know, that you don't know who's going to acclimatise well to the low levels of oxygen,
No.
and that's exactly the problem that doctors face in intensive care. Once again, Jen and Jan eventually arrive into camp, a few hours behind the rest of the group. With the hiking due to get tougher and tougher, their speed could become an issue. A team of medics have also discovered that Jan has developed another problem. So Jan and Jen, how are you feeling?
Well, I think the altitude is kicking in, isn't it? But I've been diagnosed with high blood pressure, so it's all a bit of an effort this morning.
Have you seen the doctors about that?
Yeah, certainly. It's a case of slowly keep going, but watch out for symptoms that might mean I have to come down. But when you look back and see the views, well...
Exactly.
That is stunning.
Good point, good point.
On we go, ever onwards.
So we've come to a rather sobering part of the trek, and on this small and otherwise insignificant plateau, there is memorial after memorial after memorial to those who have died on Everest. And it's a very powerful reminder of the dangers of coming to extreme altitude. Charlie, today's been probably, for me, one of the toughest days, but you're looking remarkably fresh.
I'm just loving being in this extraordinary environment. Can I say that I'm feeling on top of the world?
Oh, no. And finally, after 8 days of trekking, we arrive at Everest Base Camp.
Extraordinary. Absolutely amazing. We're here.
All right.
Right.
Poor Tom's lost vision in one of his eyes at the moment, so...
Really?
Yeah, I can't really see very well out of my right eye.
Right. You've got a camp full of doctors.
Yeah.
Cheers.
With the majority of the team safely in camp, Jen and Jan are still battling on.
Congratulations. Was there any doubt in your mind that you'd get here?
Hundreds, yes, but we are not quitters.
I've gathered that.
Quite an achievement, I think, yes.
No, I'm very impressed, guys. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. Here at Everest Base Camp, we're at 5,300 metres above sea level. It's cold, it's remote, it feels very alien. We're sleeping and walking on a glacier, and yet despite that, incredibly, the Extreme Everest team has set up a fully functioning scientific laboratory from which they'll continue to test the 200 or so volunteer trekkers as they make their way to this altitude.
It's quite a challenging environment even just for people to live in here. It's way above the altitude that humans can dwell at permanently, so you start to sort of deteriorate after a while, and so there's a limit to the amount of time you can spend up here. You know, the ends of people's fingers who've been here for a while, all your skin starts to crack, you get a sore throat, and you often hear a round of coughing at night, with the people sort of coughing whilst they're trying to sleep. They call it the Khumbu cough. It's quite particular to this region of Nepal. Yeah. These are the main experimental tents now. So this longer tent on the left here is what we call the main lab. And when you go in there later, what you'll see is a whole host of different experiments being conducted in there. This smaller one here is the cardiopulmonary exercise testing. So there's a couple of exercise bikes in there.
Ah, the bike test, yeah.
Yeah. There's various different stations around the room where different experiments are being conducted. I think we have permission to do approximately 65 different studies in total.
Some of the more invasive tests are only being done on a small group of people, and I, perhaps foolishly, have volunteered for one of them.
So you ready for this test?
I'm ready.
Okay, so the idea of this test is we're going to take your oxygen levels down. So they're already quite low, they're 80% of what they normally are.
Right.
We're going to take them down to about 60% of what they normally are. And what I'm interested in is how your breathing changes. Do you breathe faster? Do you breathe deeper?
So you're expecting those that acclimatise well to low levels of oxygen to respond in one way,
yeah,
and those that don't to respond in another?
You live in England, I'm expecting you to breathe quite fast and not find it the most pleasant test in the world, to be honest.
I'm looking forward to this, thank you.
So this is going to measure your blood oxygen levels.
Okay.
And it just shines light through your ear. I'm going to use this flow sensor here.
Yeah.
That's going to measure your oxygen and your carbon dioxide levels. And it will also see how much gas is moving in and out as you breathe.
Fine.
Okay.
Here we go.
So now we're just dropping the oxygen levels. You can see the air moving in and out of the bag there. And then I'm going to just ask him to tell me how his breathing is out of 10. So he's sort of moderate breathing at the moment. So you can see his breathing starting to pick up. Compared to a Sherpa would be absolutely fine. So you can see this is a sort of classic response of a lowlander who's not tolerating the breathing at all. How's he breathing there now? 9. So he's at 75% of what he would be in London at the moment. Okay, we'll take you off there. A couple of big breaths in and out for us. So Sherpa would find that absolutely fine. That's the kind of level you'd be if you're intensive care. And we think things like how you respond to the low oxygen is probably key to why some people survive in intensive care and some people don't.
I started getting all flushed, tingly hands, just, yeah, really, really unpleasant.
On our second morning in camp, the dangers of living at this altitude become all too apparent.
Unfortunately, a team of Sherpas are having to evacuate one of the trekkers from the camp. It's a harsh reminder of the dangers of being in this environment and also the risks that the Extreme Everest team face day in, day out in order to conduct their research.
So I'm here with Dr Ned Gilbert, who's the research leader for Extreme Everest, and he's just about to test Charlie.
Poor Charlie's looking nervous. What we're going to do is look at the microcirculation, the very small blood vessels under Charlie's tongue. It doesn't matter how much oxygen you're getting in through your lungs, how much oxygen your heart's pumping out. If you haven't got the microcirculation to distribute that oxygen, then you're not going to get to the places which need to be, which is the mitochondria. Ready to rumble? If I can focus in, you can actually see movement.
Oh my word, that's crazy.
In the blood vessels. Certainly from the initial images, it seems the Sherpas have a far greater number of the tiny blood vessels and microcirculation than what we're excited about. So, cutting edge science, eh?
Rewriting medical textbooks.
This is science in action.
Now it's Jen and Jan's turn. Being able to compare the results of twins is hugely beneficial to the research being done, to see how external factors can affect the behaviour of our genes.
So we're going to do a skeletal muscle biopsy.
Right.
Which involves taking a small sample of muscle tissue from the side of the leg here. So we're just going to put some local anaesthetic in the skin now, okay? So scratching the skin, well done.
The muscle twitch.
Yeah, it does.
This is where one of my dentists I had once used to play the balalaika while the anaesthetic was
working. Yeah. So for these specific samples, we will be looking at a process called epigenetics.
I see.
So when we have identical twins, as we do here, their DNA must be identical, but their epigenetics may be different due to the sort of stresses and strains that have occurred to them over their lifespan. And so what we're particularly looking at with the twins is how differently they adapt to the low levels of oxygen at high altitude, and then see whether the epigenetic signals that we can look for in the lab will correlate with that.
Epigenetics looks at how non-genetic mechanisms such as diet, behaviour, toxins and other environmental factors change the way genes behave, but without changing the underlying DNA sequence.
Should be enough.
Okay. This is the first time that epigenetics has ever been looked
really,
at
wow.
at high altitude, so it's a really...
So the trek's all been worthwhile for this moment.
That's the reason why we came.
There we are. Scientific history in the making.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Dan, when the 200 or so subjects have been tested and the tens of thousands of pieces of data that you've collected have been analysed, where do you hope to see the impact of this research project going?
The mechanisms that we see here, which are clearly beneficial to some people, we will try and find ways of recreating that at sea level. So be that through pharmacological methods, using drugs to almost create a Sherpa-like physiology. If we can identify alternative ways of dealing with low levels of oxygen, it may completely revolutionise the way in which critically ill patients are treated at sea level.
So in 10 years' time, we could potentially see the clinical benefit to it?
It's quite a bizarre thought, really, to think that it started here on this sort of gravel and rock next to the tallest mountain in the world.
My time with Extreme Everest has been remarkable, and I've been challenged and inspired. But what's been most exciting about this expedition is the incredible groundbreaking science that's been conducted here, and its potential to save countless lives will be a true testament to the extraordinary efforts of an extraordinary team.
For instance, you can become blind, kidney failure. The consequences can be, well, fatal. So
yeah,
obviously, I don't really want that.